The first months of marriage with John Jungkook were unlike anything you had ever imagined. He wasn't cruel, nor was he affectionate. He carried himself with a kind of calculated restraint, polite of fault, but his voice never rose. His words never lingered, and his gaze rarely held yours for more than a fleeting second. Mornings were the quietest. The house would already be filled with the faint aroma of freshly brewed coffee. When you stepped into the kitchen, though you hadn't prepared it yourself, a single cup would be waiting for you on the counter, untouched, the steam still rising. You knew it was his doing. Jungkook never mentioned it, never left a note, but the way the maids avoided making coffee in the mornings told you enough. He did it himself, silently before leaving for work. At breakfast, the silence stretched between you like a third presence at the table. He read through files while you stirred your tea, stealing glances at him, trying to decipher what went on behind those unreadable eyes. Finally, you attempted to break the stillness. You don't have to make coffee for me every morning. Jungkook didn't look up from the papers. His voice was calm, even distant. You prefer it with 2 spoons of sugar. The staff forgets. You swallowed, not knowing whether to thank him or to feel insulted that he remembered such a detail, yet still kept himself so far away. Sometimes you would catch him observing quietly when you skipped a meal, when you sat outside in the cold breeze too long, or when one of the maids spoke to you with less courtesy than they should. He never interfered directly, but the next day the maid would approach you, overly respectful, almost fearful. You knew Chukuk had said something. And yet, when it came to you personally, he was all walls. One evening, you found it the courage to ask, "Do you hate this marriage that much, Jungkook?" He didn't flinch, didn't raise his voice, didn't even sigh. He only closed the file in his hands, setting it neatly on the table before meeting your gaze with those dark, motionless eyes. "I don't hate it, but I don't indulge in things I cannot feel." The words stung more than it if he had shouted at you. That night, you lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering what it would take to break through the ice that surrounded him, or if you ever could. It was late one evening when you finally snapped under the weight of his indifference. The house was silent, the kind of silence that echoed, and Jungkook was, as always, sitting at his desk, immersed in papers that seemed more important to him than the women he married. You stood at the doorway, your voice steady, though your chest trembled. Jungkook, marriage isn't just sharing a roof, it isn't just silence and meals left on the table. Marriage is supposed to mean something. Do you even want this? He stopped writing, his pen pausing mid sentence for a moment. You thought he might ignore you like he usually did, but then he placed the pen down carefully, aligning it with the edge of the paper, and looked up at you. His eyes were calm, too calm, as though your words didn't parse him at all. "I never wanted to hurt you, but I'm not ready to let anyone into my heart." Why? He inhaled slowly, his jaw tightening, because once you let someone in, they can't leave. And when they leave, they take pieces of you with them. I have seen it before, and I can't live through it again. Your chest ached at the raw honesty in his tone, but it wasn't enough not for you. "So, what are we, Jungkook, strangers forced to share a house? I can live like this." He leaned back in his chair, his gaze never wavering. Then don't. If you want distance, you will have it. I won't stand in your way. And so the silent agreement was made that night. You were not husband and wife anymore, not in the way that mattered. You lived together, but you were worlds apart. A cold truce, an emotional breakup with no slammed doors, no screaming, only silence that grew heavier with each passing day. Weeks later, the monotony of that cold routine was broken by the sudden sound of cheerful laughter echoing through the hall. Hannah, Jungkook's elder sister, arrived at the mansion with her usual whirlwind of energy, her daughter skipping beside her. Hannah was everything Jungkook wasn't: warm, outspoken, career driven, yet deeply affectionate with her only child. She hugged you tightly the moment she saw you, her perfume lingering like a reminder of a different kind of love, one that Jungkook had long buried. Wine, I need your help again. You know Minji won't stay with the maids. She's gotten so stubborn. She only wants her pretty auntie to watch her. The little girl peeked out from behind her mother's leg, her big eyes lighting up when she saw you. Auntie Wine, you promised you would play with me last time. You smiled, bending down to her level as she ran into your arms, her smile hands clutching your dress like you were her safe place. Of course, Minji, I always keep my promises. Hannah let out a breath of relief, pushing her hair back. I don't know what I would do without you. With the company expanding and my husband out of town, I barely have time to breathe. And honestly, I trust you more than anyone else with her, even more than the maids. Her words warmed you in a way Jungkook's silence never had. It felt good, needed, even to be trusted, to be wanted. From then on, Minji became a regular presence in your days, filling the cold walls of the mansion with her stubborn little demands and bursts of laughter. She was clingy, yes, but her innocence became a balm into the emptiness you carried. And though Jungkook rarely spoke, you noticed the subtle shift whenever his knife was around, something softened in his gaze, a smile ghosting his lips when Minji tugged on his sleeve. It was the one time you saw him shed that cold mask. For a fleeting moment, you wondered what it would feel like if he ever looked at you that way. The grandfather clock in the hallway had just struck 2 when the sound of footsteps echoed in the mansion. You frowned, glancing at the time again. 2 o'clock. Jungkook never came home this early, ever. Your pulse quickened as you heard the heavy creak of the front door and the low murmur of his voice speaking briefly with a guard. Minji, perched on the counter beside you, noticed your startled expression and leaned close, whispering dramatically, "Uh-oh, uncle is home early." You chuckled softly, trying to mask the sudden unease. "Don't worry, let's finish lunch before he notices we have stolen half the vegetables already." Minji giggled, her small finger sneaking another carrot stick from the cutting board. She dipped it in the sauce you had just finished stirring, scrunching her nose at the taste. "Too spicy, auntie. You were trying to burn me alive." "Oh, please, it's barely spicy. You're just dramatic." Her laughter filled the kitchen, chasing away the silence that usually haunted the house. You smiled despite yourself, grateful for her presence, for the distraction, but when you turned to check the soup simmering on the stove, you felt the light weight on the counter vanish. "Minji, where did you?" "Minji?" No answer, just the faint paper of little feet heading upstairs. Your stomach dropped. Chunguk had gone upstairs to change, and if Minji, before you could move, a sharp crash echoed through the halls. Glass shattering, something heavy tumbling to the floor. You rushed out of the kitchen, heart hammering, only to find Minji standing frozen in the middle of Jungkook's study, her tiny hands trembling at her sides, shards of glass glittered at her feet, and one of his files lay scattered across the carpet. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with fear. Hey, hey, sweetheart, it's all right. You stepped forward carefully, lowering your voice into something soft, soothing. Did you hurt yourself? Don't move, okay? Auntie's here. But before you could reach her, the door slammed open. Jungkook stood there, freshly changed, his damp hair still clinging to his forehead. His eyes swept the scene in an instant, the broken vase, the scattered papers, your figure hovering near his desk, then his expression hardened into something dark. What the hell happened here? His voice thundered in the room, making Minji flinch behind you. You turned to face him, your lips parting to explain, but the anger in his eyes was already burning through you. In two strides, he was in front of you, his jaw clenched, his gaze sharp and unforgiving. You are a careless swine. Can't you even keep an eye on a child for a minute? Wait, Jungkook, I didn't. The words never finished. His hand came down against your cheek with a force that left you stunned, the sound echoing louder than the crash of the vase. You staggered back, your hand flying to your face, the sting searing through your skin, your eyes widened in disbelief, not just from the pain, but from the shock. Chunguk had never touched you like that, never for a moment. Silence filled the room. Even his anger seemed to freeze as he registered the tears slipping down your cheek. I didn't. Your voice cracked, barely more than a whisper. Something shifted in Jungkook's expression. His brows furrowed, his chest rising sharply as realization dawned. He looked from you to his eyes, his lips parting as though the pieces finally fell into place. But you didn't let him speak. Gathering Minju into your arms, you held her close, shielding her small frame against you. You didn't spare him another glance. Without a word, you walked out of the room, your footsteps steady despite the storm inside you. Behind you, Jungkook's hand fell limp at his side. His breath came ragged, his eyes fixed on the doorway you had just disappeared through. He cursed under his breath, his voice raw. What have I done? But it was too late, the damage had been done. You carried Minji down the hallway, her little arms wrapped tightly around your neck. She was trembling, her face pressed against your shoulder, as though hiding from the world. You didn't allow yourself to cry, not here, not where Jungkook could see. Your pride wouldn't permit it. The sting on your cheek burned, but it was nothing compared to the hollowness in your chest. Behind you, Jungkook stood frozen in the vacuum of his study. His eyes followed you until you disappeared around the corner. Only then did his gaze shifted to the broken vase, the scattered papers, and finally the faint, glassy eyed guilt still lingering in Minji's face before you carried her away. He ran a hand through his damp hair, his jaw clenched so tight it hurt. What did I just do? The curse left him in a whisper not meant for anyone but himself. For the first time in years, he felt a sting in his chest. Shame, the kind that couldn't be silenced by logic or work. But you didn't see it, you didn't hear it, you were gone, and with you went the chance to undo his mistake. From that moment, you refused him the one thing he had always taken for granted, your attention. No glances, no words, no quiet acknowledgement, just silence, calm and deliberate, sharper than any argument could have been. Later that evening, you sat with Minji on your bed. She had been quiet for most of the day, her usual chat replaced with solemn glances and little sighs. Finally, she looked up at you, her small voice trembling. Auntie, I'm sorry I broke Uncle's vase. Please don't be sad. I'll tell him it was me. You smiled faintly, brushing back her silky hair. No, sweetheart, you don't have to say anything. This is our little secret again, alright? Her eyes widened. Secret, like the ones in stories. You nodded, pressing a kiss to her forehead. Exactly, you and me, we keep this between us. Pinky promise? She giggled softly, her mood lifting as she wrapped her tiny pinky around yours. Pinky promised, but Auntie, she hesitated, her innocent curiosity parsing deeper than she knew. Why don't you smile when Uncle is here? You smile with me all the time, but not with him. Your breath caught for a moment, the sting on your cheek suddenly heavier than before. You forced a light laugh, tickling her sides to deflect the question because you are much better at making me laugh, silly. Minji burst into laughter, rolling onto the pillows, her earlier guilt forgotten for now. You joined her, though the smile on your lips never reached your eyes. Behind the closed doors, Jungkook lingered in the hallway, hearing the muffled laughter. His hand hovered against the doorframe, his throat tightening. He wanted to knock, to step in, to apologize, but his pride and your silence held him back. Instead, he turned away, the weight of guilt pressing harder with every step. The next morning, Chunguk tried to pretend nothing had happened. He sat in the living room, a book open in his hand, but his gaze flickered constantly toward the kitchen where you busied yourself with Minji's breakfast. When you didn't look his way, he let out a deep sigh, rubbing his forehead theatrically. You didn't react. Minutes later, you heard the thud of a glass tipping onto the coffee table. The water spilled onto the carpet, dripping onto the door. Chungu cursed under his breath, expecting you to rush to his aid. You glanced at him once, then turned back to Minji, calmly wiping her hands after she finished eating. Minji, go get your crayons. We will draw after breakfast. Your voice was warm for the child, but iced cold in its absence for him. The dismissal was clear. By evening, his patience was fraying. He lay stretched on the couch, one arm over his eyes, letting out a groan as though he was in unbearable pain. I don't feel well. You didn't even glance up from folding Minji's dress. Then take your medicines, you know where it is. Blind, detached. The silence that followed was worse than shouting, worse than tears. For the first time, Jungkook understood what it felt like to be on the receiving end of indifference. That night, after Hana came to collect Minji, he finally broke the silence. She stood by the window, arms folded, the moonlight casting a shadow along against the floor. Jungkook entered hesitantly as though unsure of his right to step into your space. You didn't look at him when you spoke. Fine, I get it. You misunderstood. But tell me, why did you raise your hand on me? You promised me, Jungkook, you promised you would never cross that line. His chest tightened for once he didn't reach for excuses. His voice was low, weighed down by something he rarely showed regret. I don't know what came over me. When I saw the mess, I panicked. It scared me. Why? I have lost too much before, and all I could see was chaos. I lashed out before I could think. It wasn't rage, it was fear, but that doesn't excuse what I did. You turned then. Your eyes sharp, glistening. Fear doesn't give you the right to hurt me. I never thought you would be the one to do it. He swallowed hard, his pride bearing with the guilt written across his face. For a long moment, neither of you spoke. The space between you was filled only with the sound of his uneven breathing. Finally, you shook your head. I can't stay here tonight. You gathered a few things and left for your parents' house. The silence of your footsteps heavier than any slammed door could have been. Jungkook stood rooted in place, staring after you, his heart pounding in ways he didn't understand. That night he couldn't sleep. The bed felt colder without your presence, the emptiness beside him more unbearable than he had imagined. He tossed and turned, restless, realizing for the first time how much he had taken your quiet companionship for granted. Next to Minji, still innocent to the weight of a dull mistake tugged at his sleeve. Uncle, why don't you just say sorry? Auntie always forgives me when I mess up. Her words pierced him deeper than any argument could. He sat there in silence, her small hand gripping his shirt, her wide eyes looking up at him with trust, and for the first time, John Chunku considered lowering the walls he had built so carefully around himself. The house wasn't the same without you. For days, Chunguk found himself walking into empty rooms, half expecting your quiet presence. The soft clink of dishes or even your cold glare silence was never supposed to be this loud. He kept replaying that one moment, his hand striking you. It haunted him. It was an anger that had driven him. It was fear of losing control, of breaking something fragile, of losing you. At night, he stared at the empty side of the bed where your scent still lingered faintly on the pillow. Sleep never came. Minji noticed first. She tugged at his sleeve one evening, holding her stuffed bunny. Uncle, you don't smile anymore. Did Auntie take your smile with her? Her innocent words sliced deeper than any wound. Jungkook swallowed hard, lowering himself to her level. Maybe she did, Minji. Maybe she did. The realization settled heavy in his chest. You were not just his wife in name. You had become his anchor, his quiet constant. And now, stripped of you, he was unraveling. So one night, unable to hold it in, he whispered into the darkness as if you were still there. I'm sorry, come back, please. But the silence answered him, and for the first time, Jun Chungkook, the cold, untouchable man, felt powerless.